Before cities, kings, or written history, humanity was scattered in small tribes. But around 5,000 years ago, something incredible happened. The birth of civilization. Today I'm diving into how humans went from hunter-gatherers to empire builders, shaping the world as we know it. The earliest civilizations formed along fertile rivers where people learned to farm, build, and trade. The first great civilizations arose in Mesopotamia, what's now modern Iraq, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Then came ancient Egypt along the Nile, the Indus Valley civilization in South Asia, and ancient China along the Yellow River. These societies developed governments, religions, and social structures that would influence the future of humanity. One of the greatest human inventions came from ancient Sumer, writing. Around 3100 BCE, the Sumerians created cuneiform, the world's first known writing system, used for recording trade and laws. In Egypt, scribes developed hieroglyphs, a complex system of symbols. These early scripts helped civilizations document their history, religion, and government. As civilizations grew, powerful rulers emerged. In Mesopotamia, kings controlled vast cities like Ur and Babylon. One of the most famous laws from this era was Hammurabi's Code, written around 1754 BCE. It declared an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and set rules for justice, property, and trade. Meanwhile, in Egypt, pharaohs ruled as both kings and gods. The Egyptians built massive pyramids, like the Great Pyramid of Giza, as tombs for their rulers. They believed in an afterlife where the dead would live forever if properly mummified and buried with treasures. While Egypt and Mesopotamia thrived, another great civilization emerged in South Asia, the Indus Valley civilization around 2600 BCE. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa had advanced drainage systems and urban planning, but their mysterious script has yet to be fully deciphered. In China, the first dynasties, like the Shang and Zhou, established powerful kingdoms. The Zhou introduced the mandate of heaven, the idea that a ruler's power came from divine approval. If a ruler failed, natural disasters were seen as signs that they should be overthrown. The birth of civilization changed everything. It gave us writing, law, trade, and monumental architecture. These early societies laid the foundation for the empires and nations that would follow, but history was just getting started. After the birth of civilization, human societies grew more complex, leading to powerful empires that shaped history. Today we'll explore the great empires of the ancient world, how they rose, how they ruled, and how they fell. First up, the Persian empires. Founded by Cyrus the Great in 550 BCE, the Persians ruled a vast empire from India to Egypt. They built the Royal Road, a network that allowed messages to zip across the empire faster than ever before, but expansion came at a cost, conflict with the Greek city-states. Speaking of Greece, the birthplace of democracy and philosophy, Athens gave citizens a voice in government, while Sparta focused on military strength. The Greeks united to fend off Persia during the Persian Wars, with epic battles like Thermopylae and Salamis. Then came Alexander the Great, who conquered Persia and spread Greek culture from Egypt to India, blending it with local traditions. Next, the Roman Republic and Empire. Rome started as a republic with senators and consuls at the helm. After crushing Carthage in the Punic Wars, Rome expanded across the Mediterranean. Political turmoil led to the rise of emperors, with Augustus being the first. Rome enjoyed the Pax Romana, a golden age of peace and achievements, but by the 4th century, corruption and invasions led to the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE. During this era, major religions took root. Buddhism spread across Asia, Judaism faced persecution under Rome, and Christianity emerged in Judea. Despite Roman resistance, Christianity grew and became the dominant religion by the late Roman Empire. The Age of Empires laid the foundation for law, governance, and culture. But with Rome's fall, a new era was on the horizon, the Middle Ages. When the Roman Empire collapsed in 476 CE, Europe entered a period of political chaos. But while Europe struggled through the Middle Ages, new empires and ideas were rising in the East. This is the story of the medieval world and the rise of one of history's most influential civilizations, Islam. With Rome's fall, Europe split into small kingdoms ruled by warlords. Without a strong central government, a system called feudalism developed, where kings granted land to lords who in turn protected peasants in exchange for labor. Meanwhile, Viking warriors from Scandinavia raided coastal towns, shaping the medieval world through conquest and trade. In the 7th century, Islam emerged in Arabia, founded by Prophet Muhammad. Within a century, Muslim rulers controlled lands from Spain to India, creating the Islamic caliphates. During the Islamic Golden Age, scholars in cities like Baghdad and Cordoba made groundbreaking discoveries in medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy, preserving and expanding ancient Greek and Roman knowledge. Religious tensions between Christians and Muslims led to the Crusades, a series of wars over control of the Holy Land. In 1099, European knights captured Jerusalem, but in 1187, the Muslim leader Saladin retook the city. The Crusades changed history, not just through war, but by connecting Europe to the rich cultures and trade of the Islamic world. In the 13th century, Genghis Khan united the Mongols and launched the largest land empire in history. The Mongols conquered China, Persia, and Russia, reshaping the world. Though brutal in battle, they also protected the Silk Road, allowing trade and cultural exchange between Europe and Asia. In 1347, the Black Death swept through Europe, killing nearly half the population. With fewer workers, feudalism weakened, and cities grew in importance. Meanwhile, in Italy, a rebirth of art, science, and learning began. The Renaissance, the medieval era, was ending, and the modern world was about to begin. The Middle Ages were a time of war, faith, and transformation. But as Europe emerged from the darkness, a new age of exploration and discovery was on the horizon. By the 15th century, the world was on the brink of a new era. Advances in navigation, the desire for wealth, and the competition between empires led to one of history's most dramatic periods, the Age of Exploration. This was a time of discovery, conquest, and transformation that would shape the modern world. For centuries, European trade with Asia relied on overland routes like the Silk Road. But after the fall of Constantinople in 1453, these routes became dangerous and expensive. European nations sought a new way to reach the riches of Asia by sea. Innovations like the caravel, a new type of sailing ship, and navigational tools like the astrolabe and magnetic compass made long ocean voyages possible. Portugal was the first European power to explore the Atlantic, with Prince Henry the Navigator funding voyages along Africa's coast. Then, in 1492, Christopher Columbus set sail under the Spanish flag, hoping to find a westward route to Asia. But instead he landed in the Americas. Just a few years later, Vasco da Gama reached India by sailing around Africa, proving a direct sea route was possible. After Columbus, Spanish explorers known as conquistadors arrived in the Americas. In 1519, Hernán Cortés conquered the Aztec Empire, and in 1533, Francisco Pizarro defeated the Inca. These conquests brought vast wealth to Spain, but also led to the collapse of indigenous civilizations. The Columbian Exchange followed, an enormous transfer of plants, animals, people, and diseases between the old and new worlds. Tomatoes, potatoes, and chocolate went to Europe, while horses, wheat, and smallpox came to the Americas. Soon England, France, and the Netherlands began their own voyages. The English settled in Jamestown in 1607, and the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth in 1620. The French controlled Canada, and the Dutch established a powerful trade empire stretching from Indonesia to the Caribbean. However, exploration had a dark side. To work the new colonies, Europeans began the Atlantic slave trade, forcibly bringing millions of Africans to the Americas. This devastating system shaped the history of the Western Hemisphere for centuries. As exploration expanded the world, so did ideas. Scientists like Galileo and Newton challenged old beliefs with new discoveries about the universe. Meanwhile, philosophers like Locke and Voltaire argued for human rights and democracy, laying the foundation for revolutions to come. The age of exploration forever changed the world. It connected continents, sparked scientific advancements, and spread new ideas. But it also brought war, slavery, and exploitation. By the late 18th century, the world was changing faster than ever before. Ideas of liberty and democracy led to revolutions, while new technologies sparked the Industrial Revolution. This era reshaped societies, economies, and politics forever. Inspired by Enlightenment ideals, people across the world began challenging monarchies. In 1776, the American colonies declared independence from Britain, creating the first modern democracy. Just over a decade later, France followed, overthrowing its monarchy in the French Revolution. But this revolution quickly turned chaotic, leading to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. At the same time, the Haitian Revolution became the first successful slave uprising, creating the first free black republic. Inspired by these revolutions, leaders like Simon Bolivar and José de San Martin fought to free Latin America from Spanish rule. While revolutions reshaped governments, a technological revolution transformed daily life. The Industrial Revolution began in Britain, with new machines like the spinning jenny and steam engines making production faster than ever. Factories replaced small workshops, cities grew rapidly, and new inventions like the railroad and steamship connected the world. However, this progress had a cost: poor working conditions, child labor, and pollution. In response, new ideas emerged. Capitalists like Adam Smith argued for free markets, while socialists like Karl Marx called for workers to unite against factory owners, laying the groundwork for future conflicts. As nations industrialized, nationalism grew. In the 19th century, Italy and Germany united into powerful new states under leaders like Otto von Bismarck and Giuseppe Garibaldi. Meanwhile, Britain and France expanded their empires across Africa and Asia, leading to conflicts with indigenous peoples. In the United States, tensions over slavery led to the Civil War, ending in 1865 with the abolition of slavery. By the late 19th century, industrialized nations looked beyond their borders for resources and power. European leaders met at the Berlin Conference in 1884, dividing Africa without considering local cultures. Britain, France, Germany, and Belgium took control of vast territories, leading to brutal exploitation. Resistance movements, like the Zulu Wars in South Africa, the Boxer Rebellion in China, and the Indian Rebellion of 1857, showed that many fought back, but European military superiority often prevailed. The 19th century was an age of revolution, industry, and empire building, but as competition between nations grew, tensions began to rise. The world was heading toward its most devastating conflict yet, World War I. The 20th century was one of the most violent, transformative, and groundbreaking periods in human history. From world wars to revolutions, from nuclear weapons to the moon landing, this was a century that shaped the modern world. In 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand set off a chain reaction that plunged Europe into war. Nations formed two major alliances, the Allies and the Central Powers. New technologies like machine guns, poison gas, and tanks made the war more destructive than any before. By 1917, the United States entered the war, tipping the balance. Finally, in 1919, the Treaty of Versailles ended the conflict but left Germany humiliated, laying the groundwork for an even greater war. After World War I, economic turmoil and political instability led to major changes. In Russia, the Bolshevik Revolution overthrew the Tsar, creating the world's first communist state, the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, the Great Depression of 1929 devastated economies worldwide, giving rise to extreme ideologies. Fascist leaders like Adolf H. and Mussolini gained power, promising to restore national glory, but at a terrible cost. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, igniting World War II. The Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, faced off against the Allies, Britain, the Soviet Union, and later the United States. The war saw unimaginable horrors, including the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were murdered. After years of brutal fighting, the D-Day invasion of 1944 led to Germany's defeat in 1945, but the war ended with a terrifying new weapon, the atomic bomb. The United States dropped nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Japan's surrender and ushering in a new era, the nuclear age. After World War II, two superpowers emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union. Their competition shaped the world for decades. Both nations stockpiled nuclear weapons, leading to events like the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the world came close to nuclear war. Meanwhile, they fought indirectly in conflicts like the Korean and Vietnam Wars. But the Cold War wasn't just about war, it was also a race for technology. In 1969, the US landed the first humans on the moon. By 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, marking the end of the Cold War. As the world recovered from war, colonized nations fought for independence. In 1947, India gained independence from Britain, inspiring other movements across Africa and Asia. In the United States, the 1960s saw the rise of the civil rights movement, led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., who fought for racial equality. In South Africa, Nelson Mandela helped end apartheid, becoming the nation's first black president in 1994. By the end of the 20th century, the world was more connected than ever before. Computers and the internet revolutionized communication while economies became more globalized. Nations like China rose to economic power, setting the stage for a new century of challenges and opportunities. The 20th century was a time of war, innovation, and change. It shaped the modern world, but what lies ahead? Like and subscribe for more history videos.